Hello, this is my next video about how we read the Bible, particularly thinking about in this current kind of COVID-19 crisis that we're in, all trapped in our homes, or it feels like that even if we are allowed to go out. How do we actually go about reading this book if we're now choosing to devote some more time to Jesus, develop some rhythms of life that will stand us in good stead for the rest of our lives? I'd like to talk in this little video about what questions we ask when we're reading the Bible. So at our life group over the last term, we've been reading the Gospel of Mark together because some of the guys in our life group were saying, I'm not quite sure if I know how to go about reading the Bible. And I thought the best way to do that was to kind of demonstrate it together. So not every time we meet, but often we'll open up Mark, we'll read a chapter together, and then we go through the same three questions every time, which are essentially the three questions that I often subconsciously ask myself as I'm reading the Bible in the morning. And those three questions are, the first one, what's weird? That's my first question. What is weird? By which I mean, what stands out to me? What seems surprising? What do I have questions about? What parts of the text particularly stick in my mind? What do I think is really cool? What was interesting? That sort of thing. So what first jumps off the page at me? It might be a question. It might be a thing that doesn't make sense. It might be something I think is quite exciting. What's weird? What's unusual? What stands out? And then once we've talked around the table a little bit about what those things are, is I've sat in the Bible and gone, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool, that's really interesting. We then start to ask, what does it mean? So we just talk through the paragraphs, what's going on? Basically what is happening? And if we're not sure what's happening, we start to read the text in more detail. We say Jesus maybe makes a statement, which he often does in Mark, that looks a bit confusing on the face of it. We're not quite sure what's going on. Often find that as we read the sentences around it, maybe before it or after it, we find that that tells us what's going on. It tells us what's happening. It tells us what Jesus meant by this thing that he said, by what it says next. Mark has deliberately arranged his material to help us understand what Jesus is saying. So we should always assume that there's a reason things are in the order and the layout that they are, because there normally is. And then the third question that we always ask together is, what does it tell me about Jesus? So we always finish our time, once we've kind of gone through, what does this mean? What's it saying? Kind of to read it sentence by sentence through a chapter. What does it tell us about Jesus? And we try and list off as many different things that the passage tells us about Jesus as we possibly can. And again, my routine in the morning would be that as I read a chapter or a few chapters of scripture, what stands out to me, what's interesting, what's going on, am I following the thread of it? But then what does it tell me about Jesus? And then that can then turn my heart towards worship. And with Life Group, it's often very practically what we do. We then worship, full of things in our minds about that are good about Jesus, able to say our prayers and encourage each other as we pick worship songs, full of truth about who Jesus is and what he's done for us. But do the same thing in the morning. What does this tell me about Jesus? How does this tell me that he's great? How does it show me that he's the one who defeats sin and death? How does it show me that he's the one who's come from the Father and shows me what the Father's like? What does it show me the Father's like? What do I learn about him? He's always a more interesting and perplexing and mesmerizing and fascinating character than any little sketch of him would make us think. He's the most interesting man in the world. There's always more to learn about him. There's always more to see in the text what he's like as we learn his way and learn to follow him. And then of our three questions, the fourth question, which we don't always ask at Life Group because we often run out of time, but would be, what then should I do about it? What then is next? We can't ask that until we've done the others. We have to have spotted what's interesting. We have to have understood what the text is saying. We have to have learnt what it tells us about Jesus. And then we can start to go, okay, what should I do about that? Sometimes the answer might just be, well, I need to worship him because he is great. Sometimes the answer will be more specific or individual than that. But that's when we start to ask that question once we've asked the others. Sometimes people put together a similar framework that's, what does it say? What does it mean? What does it mean to me? My framework does essentially exactly the same thing. But when you're reading the Bible on your own at the moment, as you're trying to dig into it and thinking, I want to get more of God, well, ask yourself these questions. What's weird? What stands out? What does it mean? What does it tell me about Jesus? And then I was thinking it might be fun to show you what I mean by this by doing some of what we've done in Life Group over the last term on some videos, partly to help our Life Group. We're meeting together on Zoom, but I think other people can kind of get in on it as well. So what I'm going to do in some other videos is we're going to start with Mark. We're probably going to do one chapter at a time. We'll keep going as long as this current situation that we find ourselves in keeps going. But essentially, I'll do a little video with some reflections based on that chapter, trying to lead you through, oh, how could I ask that? Where would these questions lead me? What would that look like? As well as perhaps trying to create some opportunity for some interaction on one of the online platforms that we use. But we'll tell you more about that when we get there. Okay, nice to see you all. See you soon.